We're learning new details about one of those deadly U.S. strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean. Sources tell CNN the U.S. military carried out a follow-up strike on September 2nd after becoming aware of survivors in the water. The sources tell us that prior to the strike, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth had ordered the military to ensure everyone on board was killed. People briefed on the, quote, double tap strike say they're concerned that it could violate the law of armed conflict, which prohibits the execution of an enemy combatant who is taken out of the fight due to injury or surrender. Now, since September, as you're seeing on your screen here, the U.S. military has carried out at least 21 known strikes on suspected drug trafficking boats, killing at least 83 people. Officials have also acknowledged, though, not knowing the identities of everyone on board before they are struck. And this development comes as President Trump says the U.S. military will soon begin land strikes on alleged drug trafficking networks in Venezuela.
Hey everyone, Adam here, and we're back with another one. A U.S. military strike destroyed a boat in the Caribbean, killing 9, and when 2 survivors clung to wreckage, a second missile was ordered to obliterate them. The White House is reportedly celebrating, not investigating, calling the commander a hero. In the Caribbean, a U.S. missile strike destroyed a boat, killing 9 instantly. 2 survivors clung to wreckage unarmed and helpless, only to be hit by a second strike ordered by American military leadership. The story continues. And then came the second missile. A deliberate, calculated decision was made to fire again at those 2 survivors. They were blown apart in the water. Those exact words come directly from journalists who reviewed the details of this operation. Blown apart in the water. 2 people who had already survived 1 missile strike, who were completely helpless, completely defenseless, completely incapable of harming anyone, were targeted and killed with precision military force.
Let's get right to what America's talking about: war crimes and whether Pete Hegseth committed one. The Pentagon strikes on alleged boats in the Caribbean. They are raising serious alarms from both sides of the aisle tonight. Despite a debate about whether the administration has the authority to even strike the boats, 22 of them have been sunk. More than 80 people killed in those strikes. And now the reports seem to indicate that one of those strikes left no survivors. And a follow-up strike or a double tap was ordered to kill everyone on board that craft. Both Republicans and Democrats are arguing that at best, a second strike is illegal, and at worst, it's a war crime.
If it was as if the article said, that is a violation of the law of war. When people want to surrender, you don't kill them.
If that reporting is true, it's a clear violation of the DOD's own laws of war, as well as international laws. So this rises to the level of a war crime.
This isn't my description. This is what actually happened according to multiple sources who have examined the evidence. And the American people deserve to know the full truth of what occurred on that day. Now, let's talk about the man at the center of this controversy. Admiral Frank Bradley is the commander who ordered that second strike. He walked into Capitol Hill recently to face lawmakers behind closed doors, and he had nothing to say to the press as he entered that building. No statements, no explanations, no defense of his actions. Just silence and the weight of an impending reckoning bearing down on his shoulders. He's under immense scrutiny right now, and for good reason. He gave the order to fire a second missile at survivors who had already been incapacitated by the first strike. Survivors who were floating helplessly in the ocean with no means of escape, no means of fighting back, no means of doing anything except holding on and hoping someone would come to rescue them.
Tonight, the man who made the call for a second strike on this alleged drug boat in the hot seat, Admiral Mitch Bradley, briefing Congress about the decision to target 2 survivors from the initial attack, a decision criticized by Democrats and some Republicans. Bradley viewed the survivors as legitimate military targets. They were in the vessel and in electronic communication with another suspected drug boat, potentially trying to continue their drug run, 2 people with knowledge of the matter told NBC News. And Bradley was with a JAG, a military legal advisor, when he made the decision to strike again, according to a defense official.
Did a military JAG say that the second and follow-on strikes were all lawful?
Yes.
The U.S. military has struck more than 20 alleged drug boats as part of President Trump's war on cartels, which he now classifies as foreign terrorist organizations.
Whoever are piloting those boats, they're guilty of trying to kill people in our country.
Lawmakers say Bradley told them Hegseth did not issue an order to kill all survivors. Republicans in the briefing say the video showed the boat loaded with drugs and that the U.S. often uses multiple strikes to kill terrorists.
According to a defense official who spoke to journalists, Admiral Bradley viewed those survivors as legitimate military targets. Let me repeat that because it's important. He viewed two unarmed, helpless people clinging to wreckage in the middle of the ocean as legitimate targets worthy of being engaged with lethal force. That's the justification being offered for what happened. But here's where things get complicated, because legal experts who have examined this case are saying something very different. They're saying that this might actually constitute a war crime under international law. Not a questionable decision, not a gray area, not something that could be debated by legal scholars with different interpretations. No, they're saying this meets the definition of a war crime. That's a stunning allegation, and it's one that the White House is desperately trying to deflect.
To be clear, does the administration deny that that second strike happened, or did it happen and the administration denies that Secretary Hegseth gave the order?
The latter is true, Abe, and I have a statement to read for you here. President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have made it clear that presidentially designated narco-terrorist groups are subject to lethal targeting in accordance with the laws of war. With respect to the strikes in question on September 2nd, Secretary Hegseth authorized Admiral Bradley to conduct these kinetic strikes. Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law, directing the engagement to ensure the boat was destroyed and the threat to the United States of America was eliminated.
You said that the follow-up strike was lawful. What law is it that allows no survivors?
The strike conducted on September 2nd was conducted in self-defense to protect Americans in vital United States interests. The strike was conducted in international waters and in accordance with the law of armed conflict.
President Trump, meanwhile, is publicly defending this attack. When reporters asked him if he would release the video of the strike so the American people could see what happened for themselves, his response was telling. He said he didn't know what footage existed, but whatever they had, they'd certainly release it. No problem. That's what he said. But actions speak louder than words, and the administration's actions tell a very different story. Because if that video really showed a clean, justified, by-the-book military operation, it would be on every television screen in America right now.
You released video of that first boat strike on September 2nd, but not the second video. Will you release video of that strike so that the American people can see for themselves what happened?
I don't know what they have, but whatever they have, we'd certainly release, no problem. You know, we stopped every boat we knock out, we save 25,000 American lives.
That's right.
And if you look at our numbers, the drugs coming in through sea are down 91%. I'm surprised there's 9%. I don't know who's doing the 9%, but it's down 91, and we're going to start very soon on land, and I'm sure you.
The fact that it's being withheld tells you everything you need to know about what it actually shows. Here's where the White House's response becomes truly revealing. Their reaction to this entire situation isn't horror. It's not dismay. It's not an urgent call for accountability. Their response is basically this. Yeah, we did it. It was great. Moving on. Trump praised the mission publicly. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth called the Admiral who ordered that second strike an American hero. The official White House line is that the Admiral acted within his authority and within the law. They're saying all of this out loud, on camera, with total confidence, as if what happened was completely routine and unremarkable. But here's the thing about that narrative. It's starting to fall apart badly now that Admiral Bradley is facing Congress. Because everyone keeps dancing around the central question that matters most. There are reports, backed by 7 separate individuals who spoke to journalists, that Defense Secretary Hegseth gave a verbal order before this mission even started. And that order was devastatingly simple and devastatingly clear. Kill everybody, not neutralize the threat, not use proportional force, not assess the situation, and respond accordingly. Kill everybody on that boat. And now that two people who probably should have been treated as survivors under international law are dead, the White House is doing exactly what this administration always does. They're pointing the finger at the one guy in uniform, the Admiral. They're saying it was his call, not theirs. It was his decision, not theirs. He acted alone, not with their blessing. But here's the problem with that defense. You can't have it both ways. You can't give a kill everybody order and then pretend you had nothing to do with the killing. That's not how chain of command works. That's not how responsibility works. That's not even a coherent argument. It's a desperate attempt to create distance between the people who gave the order and the people who carried it out. And it's not working. Because lawmakers from both parties are starting to ask very uncomfortable questions. Let me tell you about what happened in those classified briefings, because this is where the story really starts to get interesting. Admiral Bradley went to Capitol Hill and sat down with members of the House and Senate Armed Services and Intelligence Committees. He showed them the video of both strikes. He answered their questions. He tried to explain his reasoning. And then something remarkable happened. The lawmakers who watched that footage came out of those briefings with completely different reactions depending on which party they belonged to. Republicans emerged and said they were confident in Hegseth. No further questions. Cool, great, moving on. But Democrats had a completely different experience in that same room watching that same video. Democratic Representative Jim Himes, the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, walked out of that briefing and told reporters that what he saw was one of the most troubling things he had witnessed in his entire time in public service. He described it this way: two individuals in clear distress, without any means of locomotion, with a destroyed vessel killed by the United States. That's not spin. That's not exaggeration. That's a senior lawmaker describing what he watched on video in a classified government briefing. And it should make your stomach drop, because this isn't some fringe reaction from partisan activists. These are senior lawmakers from both parties reacting to what they saw with their own eyes in that classified briefing room. Now, let's talk about what the Pentagon's own rulebook says about situations like this. The Department of Defense's Law of War Manual, their own document written by their own lawyers, states this clearly. Persons who have been incapacitated by wounds, sickness, or shipwreck are in a helpless state, and it would be dishonorable and inhumane to make them the object of attack. Dishonorable and inhumane. Those are the Pentagon's own chosen words. Not a senator's words, not a journalist's words, the Pentagon's words. And international law experts speaking to multiple major news outlets said that if the reporting is accurate, both Hegseth and Bradley could face real criminal liability for what happened. Former military prosecutors said this hits the legal definition of a war crime. Not a loophole, not a gray area, a war crime. And here's where the story gets even more jaw-dropping. Hegseth, speaking at a major defense forum, was asked directly about all of this. And you know what he said? He said he didn't order the second strike himself, but he would have. He said he fully supports that strike and would have made the same call himself. Are you kidding me? So you're not taking legal responsibility, but you're also announcing to the world that you would have done the exact same thing. That is not a defense. That is a confession dressed up in a dodge. And apparently nobody in that room blinked when he said it. But let's zoom out even further, because September 2nd was not an isolated incident. It wasn't a one-off mistake. It wasn't an anomaly in an otherwise clean military campaign. Since that day, the Trump administration has carried out strikes on more than 20 boats. More than 80 people have been killed. Some reports put the number closer to 87. And in almost every single one of those cases, there has been zero due process. No trial, no evidence presented publicly, just missiles. We're talking about an administration running a shoot first, ask never operation in international waters. And when the first real scandal breaks, when two people survive a strike and then get hunted down and killed, the response from the top is, "Great job, American hero, next." Here's a detail that absolutely blew up the White House's original legal defense. The Pentagon was trying to justify the second strike by claiming the survivors had radioed for backup. They were calling in reinforcements. Still in the fight, still a legitimate threat. That was the argument. That was how they were trying to make the second strike sound legal under the rules of engagement. Except the Admiral himself told Congress that the survivors appeared to have no radio or communications devices at all. None. They weren't calling anybody. There were just two people floating in the ocean, holding on to a wrecked boat with nowhere to go. The justification collapsed right there in that briefing room in front of lawmakers from both parties. And instead of acknowledging that their story had just changed, the administration kept moving forward like nothing happened, because that's what they do. That's the pattern we've seen time and time again. When a scandal emerges, don't address it. Don't investigate it. Don't acknowledge wrongdoing. Just move on to the next news cycle and hope people forget. But this story is different. This story isn't going away, because what happened on that day in the Caribbean wasn't just a policy disagreement. It wasn't just a questionable tactical decision. It was something far more serious. And even Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski broke with her own party to say that effectively makes you a war criminal. I mean, there are rules of war. We don't do that. When a Republican senator says that in 2025, that is not nothing. That is a significant moment. Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee, Representatives Jamie Raskin and Ted Lieu, formally wrote to the Justice Department demanding a criminal investigation. They cited the Pentagon's own law of war manual directly in that letter. They called what happened a blatant violation of that manual. So now we have a DOJ investigation request sitting on the table. We have bipartisan expressions of outrage. We have multiple legal experts calling this a war crime. We have a justification story that completely fell apart in a congressional briefing room. And we have a White House that keeps shifting its story every single time new facts come out. Let's talk about what nobody is discussing enough. The bigger picture here is genuinely terrifying, because the boat on September 2nd wasn't even heading toward the United States. Admiral Bradley reportedly told lawmakers the boat was heading towards Suriname, not the US, Suriname, a completely different country. Now, Suriname is a known transit country for South American cocaine. So there may well be a drug trafficking connection here. But the whole framing the administration used, that these people were bringing drugs to America and had to be stopped, doesn't quite hold up when the boat was sailing in a completely different direction. This is the pattern in this story. Every time the administration makes a claim to justify what they did, something comes out that quietly undermines it. The radio story fell apart, the destination story got complicated. The Hegseth didn't order its story got complicated the moment Hegseth announced he would have ordered it himself. And now the big question that Democrats are asking, and that some Republicans are quietly asking in private, is this. If the Admiral gave the second strike order to comply with Hegseth's kill everybody directive, then who is really responsible here? Because in law, when a superior officer sets the rules of engagement and a subordinate follows them, the responsibility does not stay with the subordinate alone. It travels up the chain. That is the story the White House absolutely does not want anyone focusing on. But here's what makes this even more disturbing. Hegseth was asked multiple times at a major press forum whether he would release the footage to the public, and every single time he dodged. We're reviewing it. We have to be responsible. We'll see. Let me be direct about this. If that video exonerated everyone involved, it would have been on every television screen in America within 4 hours. The fact that they are sitting on it tells you everything you need to know about what's on it. This is not complicated. This is not a mystery. This is a cover-up. So here's where we are right now. Let me walk you through the core of this story in a way that makes everything crystal clear, because the implications here go deep and they are genuinely serious. This story is not going away anytime soon, no matter how much the White House wants it to. And the reason it's not going away is because what happened on that day in the Caribbean wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just a bad decision. It was a deliberate, calculated act that multiple legal experts say constitutes a war crime. And the administration's response to it has been to double down, to celebrate it, to call the person who ordered it a hero, and to try to make the whole thing disappear. Let me lay out what actually happened. In the Caribbean Sea, US forces hit a boat with a missile. 9 people died in the first strike. 2 survived. They were clinging to the wreckage. No weapons, no radio, nowhere to go. Completely helpless in the water. A second missile was fired, and they were killed. That is the fact pattern. That is what happened. And by the Pentagon's own official rulebook, the document their own lawyers wrote, that second strike is illegal. Full stop. Multiple international law experts agree. Former military judge advocates agree. A Republican senator agrees. The only people saying it was legal are the exact people who ordered it. And come on. That is not exactly an impartial group of reviewers. That's like asking someone if their own answer on a test was correct. You don't get to grade your own war crimes. But here's the detail that changes everything about how you should understand this story. Before this mission even happened, before a single missile was fired, Pete Hegseth allegedly gave a verbal order. 7 sources confirmed this to journalists. That order was to kill everybody. Not if they resist, not if they're still armed, just kill everybody. And here's the critical thing about that. If that order is real and the reporting behind it is solid, then it does not matter how loudly the White House tries to pin this on the Admiral. You cannot tell someone to kill everybody and then act shocked when they kill everybody. That is not how responsibility works under any legal system on Earth. And Hegseth basically confirmed the spirit of the order himself when he stood at a defense forum and announced that he would have made the same call. He didn't say he was horrified. He didn't say he wished it had gone differently. He said he would have done the exact same thing. That is a man who is not worried about legal accountability right now. And honestly, that should concern every single person watching this. Now, let's talk about the cover-up, because it's actually messier than the crime itself. After all of this comes out, what does the White House do? They shift the story repeatedly. First, it was the survivors had radioed for backup. They were still a threat. The second strike was justified. Then it came out they apparently had no radios at all. Story gone. Then it was Bradley acted totally on his own authority. This was his decision alone. Then Hegseth announced he would have made the same call himself. Story complicated. Then it was the boat was heading to America carrying drugs. We had to stop it. Then it came out the boat was heading to Suriname, not America. Story complicated again. Every single justification has been quietly walked back or contradicted by new information. And the video that could actually settle all of this, the video that lawmakers from both parties have watched in a classified briefing and described as deeply disturbing, Hegseth will not release it. We're reviewing it. That's what he keeps saying. Weeks of reviewing. Yeah, right. If that video showed a clean, justified, by-the-book military operation, it would have been released the same day this scandal broke. The fact that it is being held back tells you exactly what is on it. People know what they saw, and they don't want you to see it. Here is the part of this story that I think deserves the most attention, because this is not just about one strike on one day. This is about a pattern, a very deliberate, very calculated pattern. The Trump administration sets up aggressive, legally questionable rules of engagement. They push those rules down the chain of command to the people in uniform. The people in uniform follow the orders they were given. And then, when the scandal hits, the people at the top suddenly develop very convenient amnesia about exactly what they told everyone to do. The Admiral is the one sitting in front of Congress. The Admiral is the one showing the video. The Admiral is the one whose name is on the second strike order. And if this ever reaches a real legal proceeding, the Admiral is the one whose career is on the line. Meanwhile, Hegseth is at a defense forum saying he would have made the same call. Trump is praising the mission on social media. Nobody at the top is acting like they have a single thing to worry about. And that should terrify every person currently serving in the United States military. Because the message being sent right now is crystal clear. Follow the aggressive orders from above, take the legally risky actions we tell you to take, And if it blows up in public, you are on your own. We will call you an American hero right up until the exact moment we need a scapegoat. That is a deeply dangerous message to send to the men and women who serve this country. And it is an even more dangerous precedent to set for what a White House can order and then quietly walk away from. Here is where we are right now. The DOJ has been asked to investigate. The Senate Armed Services Committee chairman has called for a formal inquiry. Democrats are not letting this go, not even close. And some Republicans, not many, but some, are quietly uncomfortable with what they've seen. The big question is whether any of this actually leads somewhere real. Because if this administration has taught us anything, it's that scandals don't automatically produce accountability. They produce news cycles, and then the next scandal pushes this one out of the conversation. But here's why this one is different. This is not a policy disagreement. This is not a personnel dispute or an angry tweet or a controversial executive order. This is a potential war crime with video evidence that exists, with a paper trail, with multiple witnesses, and with an ongoing military campaign that is still happening right now. As you watch this, more than 87 people have been killed in these Caribbean strikes. More than 20 boats have been destroyed. That campaign is still going, which means the rules of engagement that produced September 2nd are potentially still in effect today. And if those rules include kill everybody, that is not a one-time scandal. That is an active policy. And that is a problem that goes way beyond one admiral, one boat, 1 week in September. The bottom line is this. The White House gave an order, or something very close to one. A decorated admiral followed it. 2 people who survived a strike were tracked down and killed in the water. The Pentagon's own rulebook says that is illegal. International law says it is a war crime. And now the administration is doing everything in its power to make sure the admiral absorbs all of the blame while the people at the very top keep their hands clean and their reputations intact. That is the story, and it is not going away. Congress is still asking questions. The video is still being withheld. The DOJ referral is sitting there waiting. And Admiral Bradley, the man they are trying to make the face of all of this, has already been to Capitol Hill once. He may be going back. And when he does, the questions are only going to get harder to dodge. So here's what I want you to watch for in the coming weeks. First, does that video ever get released to the public? Because if it does, and it shows what the Democrats and Republicans who have already seen it are describing, this story is going to explode all over again in a way that will be very hard to contain. Second, does any Republican senator actually follow through and push for a real independent investigation? Because that is the only mechanism left that could force genuine accountability here. If neither of those things happens, that tells you something enormous. It tells you that in this political environment, even a war crime, even 2 people blown apart in the ocean after surviving a missile strike is not enough to crack the wall. And that honestly might be the most disturbing part of this entire story. Stay tuned because the next thing that happens here might just be the moment everything cracks wide open.